so I'll know when we actually are live.
Awesome.
Nicola Turner, hello. Thank you for being here. How are you today?
Yeah, good. Stoked to be here. Excited about our chat.
Excellent. And I just realised when I sent you the text just before that we had actually connected in a previous life when I was doing some stuff with conscious consumers, or what is now Kogo.
So we have, now that you say that, yeah.
Yeah, genuinely small world. So there we go. So yeah, for people tuning in, who are you? What do you do? Why are we here talking?
Why are we here talking? So my name is Nicola Turner, or you're very welcome to call me Nick. And I'm a Capricorn, and I like long walks on the beach. This is a dating podcast, right?
Yes. Yeah. Purpose dating. Yeah.
Cool. Yeah, just don't tell my husband. I think probably more relevant is the fact that I spent the first 15 years of my career working in the fast-moving consumer goods industry, or the FMCG industry. So essentially the industry that puts products on our supermarket shelves. And my job in that industry became all about understanding shopper insights, shopper behaviour, and then using that insight to orchestrate things to get people to buy more. And then about 10 years ago, and it was a wellbeing trigger, but we being myself and my husband, started on a sustainability journey. And sort of started going, it really became a journey about questioning every aspect of our consumption, because that's our impact on the world around us. And my personal values and what I was doing for a job just started getting a little bit too divergent. So I started questioning how I could kind of fuse those two things together. So the kind of standing joke now is that I used to be about understanding shopper behaviour to get people to buy more, and now I'm about understanding human behaviour to get people to consume less. And it's a weirdly similar kind of approach, but just with what I consider to be a more kind of purpose-driven outcome. And yeah, I have a social enterprise called Mainstream Green that works with councils kind of in the consultancy space and running some campaigns for them. I do a lot of speaking gigs in organisations and businesses just to get them really excited and give them some tools around how to be more sustainable. And then I do public facing stuff. So I had a book come out in January. I do live events. Yeah, thanks. Yeah. So that's kind of it in a nutshell.
Super cool. Quite a lot to unpack there, but I think certainly for me, a seemingly frighteningly similar journey to kind of purpose. I had a very similar thing about 10 or so years ago. It's kind of like, what am I doing? What am I actually contributing to? And is what I'm contributing to worthwhile? And that's partly why I'm doing this podcast or this interview series, is to help more people realize that actually there's quite a few people that have those moments in their corporate career, and you can do something about it, and it is pretty good on the other side. So thank you for being open to sharing that journey. And I also love I kind of feel like the same for me, because I do quite a bit of sales training. And again, it's kind of like the sales training, the psychology of how and why people buy, use that as a force for good to help them have a product or a service that they actually need, rather than something that those dodgy colouring in marketing people make you want to buy something because they think, you think you want to have it. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And I think it was a big part for me as well, is how do I didn't want to start again, and I felt like I'd learnt a lot, and consumption is the way of the world. And there's $1 trillion marketing industry out there that I kind of, had immersed myself in. And so it wasn't about going against that. It was about, yeah, absolutely, as you say, how do you use that insight as a force for good? So, yeah.
So was there like a specific moment? Like for me, there was a specific moment. I was standing in an operating theatre. So I used to be a medical device rep before I sort of had my early midlife crisis, purpose epiphany, kind of two sides of the same coin. And I distinctly remember the moment I was standing in an operating theatre. The orthopedic surgeon, was being particularly belligerent, more so than on any normal day. And I just thought, you know what, I'm done with this. And I went home after that. Like it was like at lunchtime, I went home and said to my wife, I'm done, I'm out, I can't do this anymore. Did you have like a specific moment? I call it the polite phrase would be the FTS moment, the F this Scheiße moment, when you kind of like flip the table. It's like, I'm done, see you all later, I'm out of here. Do you have like a moment like that?
No, I wish I did. And I think I'm just going to orchestrate one just so that I can say that I did.
To feel like you had the full experience.
Yeah, I feel like I want to flip a table now. So no, I didn't flip a table. No, mine, I don't feel like there was a single sort of lightning rod moment. It's definitely been a little bit of a creep, I guess, versus a significant
right.
event. But the trigger that I kind of am able to pinpoint it to, and I have honestly considered making up a story, because it's really not a rock star moment. It's not a flip the table moment. It's not a, oh my gosh. It's my husband started getting very mild dermatitis on the ring finger on his left hand. That finger changed everything for me. And it was really a well-being journey for us. So it was one of those things where he got it, he went to the doctor, got steroid cream, used steroid cream, cleared up like that, stopped using it, would come back. So it was kind of this, clearly we were treating the symptoms and not the cause. And then somewhere in the Rolodex in my mind was something I'd read or heard, which is on average through the products we use, we're putting over 400 different synthetic chemicals on our skin every day. So that was our trigger, and it started very much as a personal well-being journey, but then it kind of opened up, and sustainability, purpose, whatever you want to call it, I think everybody comes at it from really different gateways, but when you get in, you kind of realize that everything's connected, right? So it became a journey about consumption and those sorts of things. So yeah, it was a well-being thing. It was my husband's finger. It was not flip the table, but it's been just a journey of connection, I guess, over the last 10 years that continues to evolve.
I mean, it's that kind of moment, because I was emceeing a conference a couple of weekends ago now in Christchurch. I've just tagged Ewen Wong, who's the amazing orchestrator of that event.
Oh, cool.
And it's all about, it's called EnviroPast, and it's all about getting to people thinking about plastics in the environment. And it's Professor Shaw. I think it's Ian Shaw. I can't remember his name. He's a toxicologist in Canterbury Uni or UC, and he talks. His talk is frightening when you get to learn about the amount of plastic that is surrounding you and how devastating it is, not just only for you as the human, but more broadly for society. And I think, again, for me, I had that moment of realization that so for me, the industry that I was working in, some of the major companies and even some of the surgeons involved with these companies were complicit in essentially killing patients in service of making more money. And you have that disconnect in your head, and you're kind of like, this isn't me. And it seems like that's kind of what you were having. It's like, you know enough to sort of be dangerous about what's actually in the products that you're selling. And suddenly you do a bit of research, you have a bit of awareness, and it's like, hang on a minute, this is not working in the same direction that I fundamentally feel. And I think that's a really common thing. So yeah, what was your first sort of steps? You did the research, you were working for these organizations trying to sell as much of this kind of stuff as possible. What was your first step?
Yes, our first step was, how do we start looking at the products that we're using on our skin? Because that's obviously where kind of our challenge was. And so we started by changing our hand soap. That's it. That was kind of the first step on the journey, I guess. And then my trigger was, because my position on what I do is, how do we mainstream sustainability? How do we make it accessible? So, and that was a really big part of my journey, and a few times I kind of went too hard, too fast. But what I realized really quickly was that just freaks everybody out and is not sustainable in itself, right? So my trigger was kind of, okay, change the hand soap. Oh, that seems to help. What's next? Every time we ran out of a product, that was kind of the trigger to go, actually, do we really need this? Because I've spent 15 years convincing people that they needed a different product for every limb and appendage on their body, every surface in the house, right? And all of a sudden it's like, hold on a minute. Yeah. Really, so it was very much a journey of simplification as well. And that kind of led on to the fact that, oh my gosh, it's, we don't need all of these different products. So that was saving us a ton of money. A ton of time, because we just weren't shopping, the way that we were previously. And then also there was less packaging waste going into our rubbish bin, and that felt good. So then it was like, well, what else is in our rubbish bin that we could reduce? And I kind of went down that rabbit hole of waste reduction. And then it kind of segued from there into, well, what about all of that bigger stuff in our life? So the furniture and the kids' toys and the clothes and all of that other kind of broader relationship with stuff, and started reading up about minimalism and living with less, and started going down that rabbit hole. Nice.
So much good to unpack there, because I think I had a very similar Actually, I don't know. It sounded like I can hear myself talking. I don't know whether it's me hearing myself on your speaker. Whether if you do you have a set of earbuds, or I just wonder whether that might just I'm just hearing a bit of echo. Sorry, listeners. We're all new to this, and we're trialing a new platform in Restream rather than StreamYard.
No.
Yeah, I can hearing a bit of echo. Sorry, I might have to go old school and put the earbuds in. Talk amongst yourselves for a second. We'll be back in a second.
My buds, I've only got my big ones, so that's
Even better. Oh, there we go. Yours look way more impressive than mine.
Hi, Catherine. Nice to have you on the line. Catherine's in the chat.
Catherine Hickling. Hey, Catherine. Here we go. Talk amongst yourselves while we just get our headphones sorted out. Yeah, sorry, I can hear a bit of reverb. If it's annoying me, it's probably going to be annoying people listening. Can you hear me still? We had some technical challenges before, didn't we? You can hear me. I can't hear you now. Oh no. Look, that's two Luddites. You can tell that we're properly middle-aged because we can't get technology. How old are your kids? Are probably old enough they could come and fix this for us. Easy. No. All right, we'll try and keep it going. That's all right. Now I can't hear you at all. I still can't hear you. I still can't hear you. I should try and play some hold music or something, but I don't know that I have the capabilities to do that. I still can't hear you, unfortunately. Sorry, I feel really bad now. We tried to go off-piste, and it clearly didn't work. Cool. So Nicola's just going to quickly jump off the call. So you have just me for a second. So yeah, if anyone's tuning in, we've got a few of you I can see on LinkedIn tuning in. Yeah, is anything that Nick's been talking about so far kind of resonated? Give us a comment. Here we go. 3, 2, 1. You're back in the room. I still can't hear you though. If there's anyone who's a techno whiz on the tuning in on LinkedIn, Catherine, as well as being a property solicitor, do you know anything about getting audio to connect on Restream? Because clearly neither Nick or I do. And she's gone again. This will be amazing on the podcast if people are tuning in, listening to the audio. It's all right. I will edit this out. Thank you, Catherine, for sticking with us. How's your day going in Auckland? Feel free to. I could send you an invite to join the stream, and we could just talk amongst ourselves. I feel like I should be singing a song or something. But I think it's so far. You know what, Kath? What? Here we go. Try again.
Now.
Yes. 3, 2, 1. You're back in the room.
The old shutdown and reboot.
There we go. Right. We're not gonna mess with anything more now.
No. And I was just saying, you can't see my highly technological couch cushions, which are actually my sound booth. I'm in a co-working space and there's building work going on next door. So it's like I need some sort of
that's a genius idea. I might have to try that myself. So we were talking about simplification, starting on something really small and not being overly aggressive, which are 3 things that I also did badly when I call it my, I had like a hard Brexit from the corporate world. I kind of, had this flip the table moment. It's like, stuff you all, you're all a pack of bastards. I'm out of here. And I was quite sort of angry at, I guess, what I felt other people had led me to become. It was almost like a bit of a grief process or a bit of a change process, sort of 5 steps of change or sort of going through grief. And I think it's kind of natural when you feel like, to a degree, you might have been hoodwinked by, the companies that you've been representing and or the people that have led you to choose those paths of working in that company. So hang on a minute, you didn't tell me everything that I maybe would like to have known for me to have made a good decision about? Or do you feel you were genuinely oblivious to? I mean, because I was kind of oblivious to a lot of the social and environmental things that I've caused. Yeah, do you feel you were kind of totally oblivious to it, or was there always a part of you that's kind of like, well, plastic's not great, but I'm happy to keep getting it out there?
I think there was definitely a time where I was oblivious, and I also think there's not, like, working with some really big corporations as well, I think there's not a whole lot of bad people sitting inside these big ivory towers planning how to stuff the world. Like, like, that's kind of what I reflected on as well. I think, I didn't feel like you in terms of people weren't telling me. I think nobody was really thinking about it. I don't think they're intentionally doing it. I think it just, consumption has become such a normalized part of our society and our world that everybody just kind of was in there to do a good job.
Yeah.
And I don't think there was a lot of consciousness around it for me or for a lot of people in there. I think it's probably different now, because I think things have shifted a lot in terms of awareness and things. But I think, 10 years ago, there wasn't the same visibility. And
yeah, I mean, I guess for me, there was, in a couple of companies, there definitely seemed to be some people who were in their ivory towers with a sort of Machiavellian, like, literally, how do we round up some small children and make them go clean some chimneys today? Because that just sounds fun. But I think for me, it was more, in general, it's that kind of the corporate focus on just maximizing revenue. And, if your focus is solely on how do we make as much money, not, rather than, is this good for the person? That will set you on a path of decision making that means you make more money and you don't think about other considerations. And I guess it's kind of like the sins of omission and the sins of commission. Do you know that the plastics are quite bad for the planet, but it's the cheapest thing we've got, therefore it's going to make us more money? Or and I think there's probably a balance. There's probably some people who were at the sort of production end, or the plastic specialists would have had some inclination of the chemical makeup of plastic and what it could potentially do. But for you, working as sort of like a marketing or product manager or something, trying to just get as many products into a store, you kind of take for granted that it's been tested and this is all good. Yeah. So I guess it's typically a mix of the two.
Yeah, and during my transition phase into what I do now, I segued into a role at a regional council. So that was kind of, I was coming back from maternity leave with my second child, and I just can't face going back into corporate. But so I took a contract at the regional council, and I still remember my first week there going, oh my gosh, like, the measures are not purely financial. This is incredible. Like, it felt incredible. But then after 2 weeks, I'm like, this is really hard, because profit it's easy, like, it's really tangible and it's super black and white and people understand it. And so after a couple of weeks, I was kind of in this state of disarray going, this is really complex. And how do you measure well-being? And how do you, it just wasn't as kind of, the hallway wasn't as defined and as narrow as it had been in corporate. So I can also kind of understand, that it's just profit it's black and white. People get it, they can measure it. And beyond that, it gets a little bit trickier.
Is Michelle Sharp, formerly of Kilmarnock Enterprises, now UNICEF, one of her go-to phrases is, well, there's two parts to it, I guess. Like, if doing good was easy, everyone would be doing it. And the other part of it is, why is doing good so hard? And it's, I think that's the thing. It's like, it's relatively easy to work out how to make more money. You cut corners, you cut costs, and or you try and sell more on the other side, or a bit of both. And it's like, it's pretty well documented. And I guess it's sort of during the 70s, the whole sort of concept of, well, we're running a bit low on money, let's fire most of the company, we'll save some money. Like, easy to make more money. It's way harder to sort of go, okay, actually, how do we make maybe not quite as much money, but also ensure that everyone has a good job and have a livelihood, and we don't destroy an entire community by making everyone redundant. And I think that's part of the thing, just that the sort of the trade winds have all I mean, historically in business for the last, 100 years of capitalism as it is, it's sort of just, make as much money, have at it. I know
and it's kind of, and I'm not saying, and it was obviously capitalism as a choice, and it's the, the kind of the norm we have now. And I'm not saying that's right or wrong, but it's become such a strong norm that when you kind of start going against that, it feels
totally. It's like the fish in water, isn't it? And people, you just take it for granted. There's a really good, he's a British documentary maker called Adam Curtis, and one of his documentaries is called HyperNormalisation. And that kind of looks into this idea of like things that are just hyper normal that you just take for granted as that's how it is. It's like gravity. It's like, it's just a thing. It just happens. You don't stop and think about it or wonder if gravity could happen in a different way, because it can't. But there are other kind of systemic things that you just kind of go, well, it's always been like that, therefore it's always been like that. So simple steps, take some action. Don't be angry about it. Don't be angry at the world. I think these are all very good first steps for people wanting to make that step change. And I think also you're sort of very similar to me. It's like you had a set of skills that had been crafted and honed in a corporate environment. And it's like, how do you flip those skills and use them as a force for good? That was exactly, my journey. So, you started working in the regional councils, and what sort of work were you doing there?
So that was in waste minimisation. And it was a really, really good stepping stone because it got me inside councils. Like I learned so much, but one of the things I learned was that I love working with councils, but being in a council wasn't the right fit for me. But it allowed me to see enough to go, okay, I can see where I can fit and where I can help and how I can kind of find a niche. Nice. So that gave me the background and the bravery, I guess, to then go out on my own. And a big chunk of my work is still with councils. And because especially in waste minimisation in particular, there is funding. There is the central government waste levy. There is a remit for all territorial authorities to be doing waste minimisation. So part of it was also that. It's like they need to be doing it. There's a lot more focus on it, a lot more resource on it, and I can kind of help in that space. So that was I was quite strong. A lot of my focus was in the waste reduction space to begin with, but then I have gone broader. One, in terms of in kind of reflecting on my own journey, and two, in terms of reflecting on my skill set, is what I talk about is mindful consumption, right? Because like I said before, consumption to me is kind of that overarching everything when it comes to our impact. Because I think everybody kind of gets, well, most people kind of get climate change and get sustainability, but they feel quite big and quite high. And that can be quite difficult to relate to on a personal level. Whereas if I kind of bridge that gap by going, it's all about the consumption choices we make. How and what we consume is our impact. That's our relationship with climate change. That's our relationship with sustainability. So that's become the lens that I've talked about. So that might be the clothes we wear, or the food we eat, or the electricity we use, or the way we get around, or the manufacturing that goes into the things that we buy, or the waste we create. So that consumption lens has kind of become my focus. Waste is absolutely a big part of that. Everything's connected, but that's become the lens and the language that I use.
Nice. I think that's, again, such great advice, because it can be really hard. You kind of go climate change. That's quite a big thing for me. I know, Jacinda's working on it, and maybe Boris, who knows what Boris is working on. Some of these people, like, you're all smart people, you're connected, you're hopefully working on some of this stuff. It can be quite overwhelming to sort of think, well, what do I do? And then, like with the whole EV thing right now, it's like, well, you hear some people say, well, the most sustainable car is the car you've got, and run that vehicle into the ground. But then you kind of go, yeah, but it's an old car that's pumping out stuff. So do I? And I think that's when there's overwhelming options and things to consider, when you are a busy mum, dad, parent, child, daughter, whatever, son, we're all busy just trying to get through our lives and do the best we can. It is pretty overwhelming. And so I think that's really, really sage advice. Again, just, look at take control of what you can, rather than being overwhelmed by all the things you can't do.
Yeah.
Just on that, like where do you see, because if you look at sort of like there's like global things like the UN, UN SDGs, looking at, life on land and water. Then you've got sort of central government level, things that they can influence. Then you've got local government, things that they can influence, and then at the individual level, clearly it's a combination of working with all of them. But yeah, how sort of connected do you get a sense that the whole thing is in terms of sort of mindful consumption? Because I mean, I remember. It's quite funny. You listen to sort of I think it was the budget, maybe not the previous one, but the one before. And within two sort of breaths, they were saying, business confidence is up. We're really happy about this. You know, people are spending, the economy's going really well. But we're mindful that there's some mental health issues in New Zealand. And you kind of go, well, maybe it's the fact that people are living a life that they don't like so much, which means they're buying shit they don't need to compensate for the... Yes. How do you? There's sort of lots of questions in there, but yeah. First one, how do you see the connectivity between the individual, the household, local governments? Because the big one for me is kind of like the recycling. You know, the pressure is on the consumer to either buy an alternative product or sort the waste out themselves. Whereas really the easiest thing would be you just put everything in a container and someone will go and sort that and make that all go away for you. Or central government would sort of, which I guess they are kind of increasingly, say you don't get to make that product out of that material.
Yeah, product stewardship. Yeah. So, yeah, I mean, I always come back to the consumer just because that's what I know, that's what I get, that's what I relate to, that's where my skill set is. Because and that's kind of my epicenter, and not because I think that that's where all the change should come from at all. I think the change needs to come all the way along the chain. Yeah. But I think what people underestimate is how much power we do have as consumers.
Yep.
Right. So if you look at the plastic bag ban as an example, you know, if you really kind of trace that back to where it first began, you know, it first began with people being really frustrated with how bad plastic is for the environment, right? You'd see all the stuff on social media, you'd see stuff out in the environment. We were learning things about the toxicity of it. We were, you know, all of those kinds of things, and people were getting upset and frustrated about that, and maybe they were posting on social media, or maybe they were emailing their local supermarket and complaining, or you know, there was your boomerang bag kind of concepts popping up, and so the supermarkets were going, oh, this is important to our customers, right? Because having been in the supermarket game, it is highly competitive. It is all about market share. So if you're constantly looking at what's your customer demand, you know, what do your customers want? How do you better service that to gain that market share? So for them to go, oh, well, actually, this is important to our customers. We're seeing this kind of appetite for things that then they obviously started doing their own kind of plastic bag, you know, charging for plastic bags, etc. Then central government goes, well, this is important to consumers or the general public. Businesses are behind this because they're starting to do something about it. We better do something about it. And then the plastic bag ban kind of came in place. So all of them had a role to play, but I think, and I'm assuming, but I think if you really go back to the epicenter of it, it started with consumer demand or consumer dissatisfaction. And I also, you know, having worked inside a consumer goods product as well, it's all about you were constantly going, what's the consumer demand? Like, I think consumers sit outside going, oh, businesses, it's all about businesses. Businesses have to make the decisions. They need to drive the change. But, you know, consumer goods companies, which is what I know, are going, what do our consumers want? How do we possibly keep up with our consumers? And everybody's kind of feeling like the other one's got the power. And so, you know, if any smart business and consumer goods as an example would be going, oh my gosh, there's a consumer demand for more sustainable products or low waste products or whatever that might be. It becomes a race to kind of, you know, create product innovation in that space. So, but again, it kind of, for me, that all comes back to the consumers.
Yeah.
Right?
I agree.
Well, no, it doesn't all come back to it. That's not fair. But I think we have a lot of power, and I think we need to be coming at it from all angles. But my kind of heartland where I spend my time and my energy is on that consumer bit, because I think there is a lot of power there.
Yeah. Nice. And it was interesting at the Enviropass conference, we had the Honourable Eugenie Sage, I think it is, but she was like, just call me Eugenie. It was really refreshing hearing a politician saying this, is that, you know, individuals will drive business, which will drive government policy. Which has kind of always been my thought, and that's partly why for me the purpose on the individual level is so important, because if you are a better person with higher levels of awareness of yourself and your impact and your connectivity with each other and the planet and what have you, that will lead you to make better purchasing decisions, which will lead you to demand more from the businesses that you support, which will then in turn influence government policy so that they get elected, essentially. I just put a note there, Kogo, or Conscious Consumers, which we connected with a while back, that that's one of their big things, is helping you understand what you're passionate about, and also helping you find and connect with businesses that care. But also, if you're a business, it's a really great tool for you to understand what your customers care about so that you can start that conversation. And it's good to know that Catherine loves Kogo. So go, Catherine.
Awesome. And it's tricky to navigate, right? Like, that's for consumers. So I think, having platforms like that help make it easier to navigate and kind of do due diligence for you.
Yeah.
Amazing. So I think it's an awesome platform.
So let's delve into some of the psychology then. Like, when you're educating consumers, do you like let them in on some of the tricks that they're being exposed to in the supermarkets? Because when I'm teaching sales training, but also because again, the psychology of sales training, like understanding other humans, is deeply connected to the psychology of purpose and understanding who you are and how you connect with the world around you. And I always say to people, if you want to have a really great lesson in the tools of influence, go and walk around a supermarket, because or any good retail environment, because the whole environment has been set up to try and make you spend more money.
Absolutely.
So do you delve into that in your sessions with people to sort of let them in on the tips and tricks that they're being exposed to?
Yes, sometimes, absolutely. And I think the really interesting thing is that broadly people are kind of aware of it. Like we kind of know, and as you say, it's not just supermarkets, it's any well-designed retail environment. It's good business, right? So all of the retail science stuff. So the interesting thing is, I think we're broadly aware of it. Most people kind of get that milk and bread and all those basics are right in the back corner for a reason. You walk in and it's the beautiful fresh produce and the smell of the rotisserie chicken or the smell of Mrs. Higgins cookies or whatever that is. I think people are kind of broadly aware of that. They might not be aware of all of it. Like we used to do a lot of work on shelf placement, simple things like it's got to be between hip and eye level. But I think if you think about that, it's pretty obvious, right? Because unless we're really looking for something, we're time poor, we don't look on the shelf,
It's just on autopilot.
Totally, we're on autopilot, which is what you were saying before, right? Is life is so busy that I think if people kind of stopped and thought about this stuff, they'd kind of inherently know it. And I think they kind of do. But again, it's kind of irrelevant because we just operate on autopilot. So I think most of us just kind of fall into the succumbing to it because and it's really interesting. I really go to the supermarket. So we go food shopping every 6 to 8 weeks. And my husband's currently at home kind of doing, the lion's share of the domestic stuff. So I haven't been to a supermarket in months.
Right.
And I went recently and I'm like, oh my gosh, like it's such an intense experience now in terms of how do you navigate all of these different products and make better choices. Like it's pretty full on. So, and so much of our daily behavior is in that subconscious or that unconscious part of our brain. It's autopilot, right? So, I think absolutely I kind of let people in on it, but I think they already are. The hardest thing is how do you kind of flick that switch into that conscious part of your brain to disrupt that and start making more conscious choices. And so my example with the supermarket is my journey was very much, I started by every time I was going to the supermarket, focusing on one product, taking an extra 60 to 90 seconds, standing in front of that category. So say it's toilet paper, right? Standing in front of that category and going, how can I make a better choice? And again, there is no perfect choice. I talk a lot about don't let perfect get in the way of good, because you say before you can tangle yourself up in knots. If it's like, do I sell my car and buy a EV or what do I do? So, and I use the example of toilet paper, right? You stand in front of the toilet paper section and you're like, okay, I could buy double length toilet paper because it's twice as much product in the same amount of packaging, right? So I've just halved my plastic packaging.
Never thought of that.
No,
that's genius. It's like,
and you have to use the roll half as often, which is a massive win when nobody else seems to in my house. So it could be that choice, or it could be, I'm going to choose a brand that's made in New Zealand, or I'm going to choose a brand that have FSC, Forestry Stewardship Council, certified sources in terms of where the pulp comes from. I'm going to buy something that's made out of recycled Clearly not recycled toilet paper, it's recycled paper.
Well, recycled, yes, but reused, maybe not.
Maybe
Yeah.
not. Or I'm going to buy one that's not perfumed or bleached, because then it's less chemicals. You know, all of those are better choices. But as you said before, one, don't get overwhelmed with which is the best, because it's also, your family's also got to be, you know, good with using it.
Don't get the tracing paper.
Exactly. And there's price is going to come into that equation as well. But to me, if you are making a conscious choice, it's going to be a better choice.
Yeah.
Even if it's not the perfect choice, because there is no such thing. And that was kind of my journey, is just choose one product at a time. Because so I used to do, and occasionally I still do them, zero waste home tours through my house here in Cambridge. And one time somebody messaged me afterwards and went, I've just spent 3.5 hours in the supermarket going through all of my products. And I'm like, wow. Don't do that.
Yeah. Are you clinically sane still, or are you? I don't do therapy that you need to talk to someone else about that. Yeah.
Because that's, whereas, you know, it's really easy to go, oh, look, changing my toilet paper purchase decision, it's not going to save the world. And it's not going to save the world. Of course it's not. But one, it's a gateway.
Yep.
You know, to other change. Two, it just, you know, it's change, and making a change feels good, no matter how small or insignificant it is. It feels good, and it will always lead on to other changes. And also, I'm so passionate about the power of social norms. You know, right? Like, I changed my toilet paper. I mentioned it to my sister. Now she's going to change her toilet paper, and then somebody else. You know, but that's what happens, right? So, yeah.
And that's knowledge is power. And like you say, you change one, you might tell. You know, that then helps me make that initial decision a better one more quickly, which means I'm then equipped to get into my second decision more quickly. Yeah. What are your thoughts, or do you have any insight on? Because obviously, you know, greenwashing is a thing under the sort of the B Corp stuff. I'm trying to, my camera's back to front. There we go. B Corp stuff. You know, there's a lot of claims are made by companies about how good their product is. And again, you know, I guess it's interesting that it's called fast moving consumer goods, but it's almost, you're also a fast moving consumer because you're so busy, you're so harried, you haven't got time to go and Google and go, well, okay, they're claiming that this is made from, really good, let's say, pick on the toilet paper. Like they're claiming it's made from FSC, and if you've got FSC, then you know we'll take it that you have got that certification. But it's easy to see a claim, see a brand name that has eco or green or sustainable in it, and you kind of just go, oh yeah, it must be okay. So what advice would you have for people wanting to make better decisions and who are worried about the greenwashing or brand washing side of things?
And it's really interesting. I was having this conversation yesterday, actually, in terms of the most powerful thing we can do is actually to slow our consumption, right? I was talking about this in the context of fashion, where the most powerful thing, the most sustainable thing to do in terms of our wardrobe, our clothing, or our fashion is to have less and wear it more. You know, that's the most powerful thing we can do.
Yep.
But that doesn't really fit the capitalist model of selling more, right? So it's quite a hard thing to market. So I think that's kind of the lens that we need to come at it from. It's not just about, I'm buying this product, I'm going to switch to buying a more sustainable product. Actually, the most powerful thing we can do is to slow our consumption. And I'll use health and beauty as an example, just because that's where I spent a lot of my career. My job, or as an organisation, it was always about how do we get people to add one more product into their routine, right? You're using 8 skincare products, how do we get you to use 9? You're using 9, how do we get you to use 10? You know, so actually I just flipped and reversed that in terms of, okay, if I'm using 12 products now, how do I take one out? How do I take one out? How do I take one out? So I think that's actually the most powerful thing we can do, is actually just to slow our consumption instead of going, I need to just stop buying what I'm buying and start buying more sustainable products. But that's kind of not the glamorous side of sustainability.
Yeah, it's kind of, but it's equally sort of frighteningly obvious, isn't it? It's just like have less stuff. And again, I think for me, it was interesting, when we were in lockdown last year and some organizations were trying to claim that they were essential. And it's like, well, that's just an interesting thing, isn't it? Like and for me, with a purpose lens at an organizational level, if you weren't deemed to be an essential business, then why does your business exist? Because if it's not essential for a human, what is it then? Is it just marketing fluff where you've created a thing that you can make people buy through the trickery and tools of sales and marketing and the tools of influence? For me, it's just a really interesting thing to think about. It's like, does a human need your product? If the human doesn't actually need your product, there was I think it was an article. I'll try and find the link to it. It was in the British press maybe a month or so ago, talking about how a group of lawyers have come together to basically create a legally defined description of ecogenocide, or ecocide. So, and it's a thought I've often had that, what would it look like in 10, 15 years time when there's maybe a Nuremberg style trial based on climate change and environmental destruction, and they'd say, well, Nicola, you were working as a category manager for, I think you were at Procter & Gamble, was that who you want to, so you're working at P&G. You knew that climate change was a thing. You knew that plastics were bad. You knew that they were massive endocrine disruptors, and yet you still were selling more and more each year. Could you describe to the court why you were doing that? And you kind of go, well, we've now got a legal definition of what kind of ecogenocide is. Yeah, wow. Clearly they're doing that for a reason, so that they can start going, hey, no, actually, this brand or this product or you as an organization are doing this. So interesting to ponder, I think, for a lot of organizations. What's your true reason for being? Is it as a vehicle to make more money, or is it actually serving someone? And I think linking consumers who are increasingly savvy and realizing that actually I don't need to buy as much stuff and I'm actually happier. We're an interesting kind of crossroads to see where that might all go.
Yeah, fascinating. And I think we are in this, just looping back to your question about greenwashing, it's super hard to navigate at the moment. So I think so much onus is put on the consumer to do that. And we're kind of in that tricky space where it's like we don't have, standards around packaging or compostability and all those kinds of things. We're in this kind of, this big kind of grey space where I think change will come, but at the moment it is tricky to navigate. Like there's apps and things like Coco, as you talked about. I have one called Chemical Maze on my phone because, look, science never my strong suit. So reading ingredients and things. So I started using that to you can just input the ingredient name and it kind of gives you that traffic lighted, smiley face or angry face or everything in between. So there are a few tools that I use like that, and you can obviously read up on companies and things like that. But we're in a little bit of a tricky space at the moment because everybody's becoming more aware of it, but there aren't necessarily super easy to use, ways to do that.
It's hard, isn't it? This adulting is not like what they said it was in the brochure, I feel, particularly in this modern world.
And from it, because like the space that I work in is behavior change, right? How do we actually change human behavior? And the tricky bit is sometimes we've kind of got to take half a step backwards to go forward, right? So I've done, through the work I do with councils, we've done work in the hospitality industry with cafes and things around coffee cups. And you'll go into a cafe and they are so stoked with themselves because they feel like they're doing the right thing by sourcing compostable coffee cups, right? They're spending more on them. They've spent time. They've really, and they feel like it's the right thing to do. But obviously compostable cups are still highly problematic. One, they're still disposable. Two, we don't have the infrastructure to be able to, actually compost them.
Yep.
Three, do we really know the impacts of compostable packaging yet? No. It's almost just, again, we're just switching our consumption. We're not challenging our consumption. The disposability of it. So you kind of got to unpick that and go, actually, that's awesome that you've started using compostable cups, but, and you've kind of got to, and it's not, people don't want to feel bad, like my big focus is how do you make people feel good about change? How do you make people feel good? But you've kind of got to take that, you've got to give people, and I don't like overwhelming people with how bad things are, but you need to have a little bit of context around the why so that people can move forward.
It's a really fine line, isn't it, between, and I think this is, for me, this is historically where the sustainability world has got it wrong, is that it's like, we're going to hell in a handbasket, you're part of the problem, you need to change what you're doing. And people don't like being shouted at, they don't like being told that they're part of the problem. And it's I think because like in my sales training, I sort of teach about Robert Cialdini's 6 tools of influence.
Okay.
How do you get people it is, I guess, like mind control to a degree, but again, used as a force for good. And it's hard to influence someone if you don't have alignment with them. And I think what's really interesting is when you look at because for me, humans are fundamentally driven by two emotions. It's either fear or desire. And I think sustainability has thrown the fear at people. Like, if you don't stop what you're doing, the world is going to burn, your children are going to die screaming in an inferno. And that's confronting, and people are kind of like, well, this is all too much. But what I find really interesting is I kind of like watching marketing and advertising just to see the trends. And the one for me that I think really sums up how the business world has nailed this is insurance, because historically it was always, if you don't have insurance when your house burns down, you're going to have nothing. So you should get insurance. Whereas now, particularly the AA advert with the whole born free, it's like, you do what you want, live your best life, go crazy, but don't worry about it because we're here to help you. And I think that's something which I think Ben at CoGo is definitely nailing, and I think by the sounds of it you're nailing, is let's approach this from a positive angle of you feeling good by doing good with small steps that are easy for you to take, rather than sort of you being shouted at by some eco warrior who knows everything about the planet. It's a real twist.
Yeah, it's a real balance. And I think also, and having, my background in corporate as well, which would be similar to yours, is sales is all about selling the benefits, right? You're selling the thing, you're selling the benefits that it brings. And that's been an interesting journey for me as well, in terms of how do you, because often saving the planet is not enough of a benefit. It's cool. Yep. People say that that's what they want to do, but it's not super personal, like it's not relatable on that individual level. So that's definitely a big part of it. But for me, it's also been going, well, what are the other benefits? What are the benefits that I've found in my journey, and how do I position those to other people? So for me, it's, slowing our consumption has fundamentally simplified our life, and it's saved us a heap of money. It's saved us a heap of time, because things like one survey found that we're going to spend 8.5 years of our lives shopping.
Wow.
So that's a big thing that we just don't do anymore. We only go food shopping every 6 to 8 weeks. We really go shopping for things. And what's the benefit of that? Well, it's more time with our family. We're kind of reconnected to the more important stuff in life that's not things. And, I found that that's a real sweet spot that resonates with people. But that was a learning for sure. In terms of when I first started out, it was all about come and learn about sustainability, be more sustainable. And people are like, no thanks. Or you just end up preaching to the converted, right? Whereas if you're like, actually, give me, like, I haven't spoken to one parent who doesn't feel overwhelmed with the amount of toys and stuff that their kids have. Right?
Yeah.
That's a pain point. So that's when, like if I'm marketing my book or my workshops or anything, that's where, where I'm kind of targeting is, okay, that's a pain point that people can personally relate to. And by the way, it has a benefit of reducing your impact as well.
Nice. Smart. Yeah, I think that's, you're 100% right. It's like, what's in it for you? Above and beyond trying to save the planet.
I'm right. It's all about,
yeah, really cool. So zero waste, how do you, like, obviously buying less is the start, but to have a zero waste house, like for me, looking at the amount of rubbish that we just put out in our bin on Wednesday night for Thursday collection. How do you do that? What would be the steps to getting to zero waste?
And look, zero waste is an oxymoron, right? We're never going to be completely zero waste, but so we put out the equivalent of one wheelie bin of rubbish a year. We're a family of 4. Wow. We burn the rest. No, I'm joking.
with our old tires, and we just put some diesel on it. Yeah, I mean, it's zero waste. There's nothing left. The amount of petrol we put on it. Love it. Spoken like a proper sales and marketing person. Well, you wanted the outcome.
Yeah. Actually, we could literally get to zero if we did that. But no, we don't. So, I mean, the big things that we do. Coming back to kind of my council lens on things, most waste audits will show that the biggest proportion of a residential rubbish bin is food waste. So food waste is it's a massive problem. One, we're wasting food.
Yeah.
Absolutely, we can start composting and worm farming and, put pressure on our council to collect the food scraps. But the most powerful thing we can do is just to eat the food that we've got.
Yep.
Buy less, get better at eating it, put things in the freezer if they're going to go off, all those kinds of things. So that's a really, and I was kind of brought up that way anyway. So I found that came quite naturally. So that's been a really big part of that, just having, very little food waste or composting what we do have. So that's been a big part of it. The way we purchase our food is a really big one as well. So we're part of a buying co-op, so we source a lot of stuff. And when I say we're part of it, like we place an order through it. There's a wonderful lady who does all the hard work.
Nice.
Yeah. Because for me, a change has to take the same amount of time and money or less. Otherwise, it's not going to stick for us. And that's very much my husband's motivation. He's very driven by time. So I think, that's an important part of any journey of change, is knowing your why and knowing the why of the people around you so that you can find solutions that match that. So, buying a lot of our food in bulk. And I'm not talking about buying things by the pallet load. I'm talking about, even if you're at the supermarket, double-length toilet paper is a good example. Or you're buying a 500-gram bag of rice, look down on the bottom shelf and you'll find that there's 5 or 10 kg bags down there, which is a whole lot less plastic for, more product. So, kind of that bulk mentality. And then the big one is just that mentality of making do. So I think, whenever, if I go, I'm going off piste a little bit here, so stop me if I need to. But, whenever I'm at a party and I start talking to people and I tell them what I do, one, they get really uncomfortable and look really awkward and guilty because, probably would not support it, and start making excuses as to why they're not more sustainable. But the number one barrier that comes up is, I'd love to be more sustainable, but I don't have the time. So a big thing for me is also to demystify and unpack this concept of convenience. Because and we've talked about this already in terms of people are really time poor, convenience is just, rules everything. But I kind of feel like we've been sold a little bit of a dummy on convenience in terms of, you look at supermarkets. When I was growing up, supermarkets were open 5.5 days a week, kind of business hours. So everybody learned how to drive in the supermarket car park. Don't know where people learn how to drive now, but, supermarkets went open on a Sunday, so you could drive in the car park. Now they're open 7 days a week, if not 24 hours a day. Right? So, and the perception of that is that it's more convenient. We're shopping more now than any other time in history. We can go whenever we want. So very few of my kind of friends in my social circles this is a double negative, wouldn't go to the supermarket multiple times a week. So most people go to the supermarket multiple times per week, right? And
I went last night and the night before.
Yeah, case in point, right? And you don't end up just going to buy the one or two things you need, right? You end up buying, you're like, how did I just spend $142?
Particularly when I take my daughter, like I did the last 2 nights. Like, come on, let's go to the supermarket. Let's let's go. And she's like, oh, can I get one of these? Can I get one of these? It's like, oh, all right.
Yeah, because it's designed, the store is orchestrated to do that, So, I think for me, it's a big part of it has been unpacking that and demystifying that concept of convenience to the point that I now know that if I don't have to leave the house, that's the most convenient thing I can do. Right. So, and a lot of that is reigniting our concept of resourcefulness, right? In terms of, we kind of, when it comes to food, it's like, what do we feel like for dinner? Okay, we feel like this, but we haven't got this, and this, so we'll shoot out and get it. Whereas if we flip that and go, what have we got?
We're having this.
Exactly. And it's not going without. It just fosters quite a nice sense of creativity. But for me, and that's more convenient because you're not having to leave the house. Even, we eat takeaways from time to time for sure. And even when we get takeaways, I'm like, I actually could have cooked something.
Yes. Yeah, totally. I heard that. I think it was Fridays, like Friday nights. I'm typically so cooked after a week of talks, podcasts, events, stuff. You're crawling into the weekend, and it's kind of like, my wife's the same. She's kind of like, should we just do Uber Eats? And it's like, and last Friday, she was like, oh, I'm not massively hungry. And I'm like, well, I'm not going to, there's no point getting takeout if it's just me. And so I kind of was forced into having to make do with what we had at home. And I sort of made like a mini pizza with a leftover wrap, that my daughter hadn't had in her lunch that week. And there was some grated cheese and a little bit of salami. It's like, took me 10 minutes to make a pizza. And it saved us probably $100 of food that is probably bad for us. Not that necessarily homemade pizza is good for you, but yeah, I was tired. It was comfort food.
Right, yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah, it's interesting. This whole, I think the modern world is this convenience, consumer, capitalist world where the expectation. I think perhaps in New Zealand we're a little bit more sheltered from this than you hear of some of the things that happen in particularly like the US and maybe around in Europe, where you can order something on Amazon and if it's not there that afternoon, you're shitty about it.
Yeah.
At least here we still have that. It might take a week, and we're kind of used to that.
Yeah.
But I think this is the real mindset shift that we need to get around. Is it's not going to be doing more with less. It's actually doing less with less as a mindset that will not only be better for us, but also better for the planet and your wallet and the whole thing. Yeah, and I think what you're doing is kind of leading into that, which is super cool.
Yeah, and I think that's the thing. We have become really wired for that instant gratification, and it feels good. We have something, you get it, you had that endorphin release. It's neuroscience, right? It feels good, and that's what we're surrounded by, that narrative, right? Whereas what I've found is, and I wrote about this in my book actually, but I remember when I was 14 years old and I wanted a pair of Levi's 501s. And I was earning $4.60 an hour, and they cost $120. So it took me a really long time to save for them. But man, did I want them, So I saved for months. I got them. I did so much research. I finally got them. I wore them to within an inappropriate inch of their life. They got turned into shorts, and then they eventually got made into a handbag, and man, that was it instant gratification? Absolutely not. Was it delayed gratification? Absolutely. Did it feel good? Oh my gosh. I still remember, and it seems ridiculous, but I've literally got goosebumps now remembering back to that because it was something I'd waited for a long time. And I think we've lost that as well. Like, instant gratification is wicked. I get it. It feels good. But there is an alternative. And I do a lot of my clothes shopping secondhand. When you find that thing, like, holy moly, that feels good.
Yeah. No, I think you've hit on so much there. I think, and I often refer to in my sort of purpose stuff, this stat was from a couple of years ago, maybe 3 or 4 years ago, so it might be more now. But globally, the advertising and marketing industry spends about $500 billion a year trying to convince you that you're not good enough unless you have the latest and greatest thing. And as the individual, you don't have $500 billion of anti-jamming software, sort of to block that. The stuff that, I remember this is a cool one. I think it was in Aussie. The Harvey Norman advert that used to be like, "Go Harvey, go Harvey, go." Like, he tried to sue them because he said that the jingle was so invasive into his head, he couldn't get it out of his head. And he's like, "You have invaded my mental real estate to the level that I can't shift it. I haven't asked you to be in my head, but you're there all the time." And it went to court, I'm pretty sure. But in the end, they said, "No, we're not. There's no case here." Although nothing happened for him. But it's an interesting thing to ponder on. It's like,
it really is. And I was lucky enough to do a TEDx talk last year.
Nice.
And that was the angle that I took, was actually there's been no marketing campaign for sustainability. There's a $1 trillion marketing campaign for consumption, but there's no, imagine, as you say, if that budget was put behind mindful consumption. What would that look like? What would that sell?
Maybe we should do this, because I would love to get a cooperative of people who see that less with less is the way forward, and start buying up some ad space. Like, imagine buying a big billboard together and just having on it, "Buy nothing today, ring a friend and say hi." Or I've seen in some, I think it's in the US, there's some people who, like, there'll be an advertising hoarding that is blocking a really beautiful view of nature. And so what they do is they take a photo behind the ad, and then they put the scene that has been blocked on the ad onto the ad, so that it makes
It is brilliant. Oh,
kind of like guerrilla sort of anti-advertising. Maybe we should start a thing here. I'm sure between us and Kogo and some other, some other people, We do pretty well. Yeah, Ruth Vanderbrink is saying, it boggles my mind that so many resources are put into vaporous, non-productive stuff. Yeah.
That's really interesting, isn't it? But it's such a strong norm. And I mean, lockdown was an interesting social experiment in that respect, right? Like how people actually went, because you couldn't consume in the way that you normally could. That was a massively positive thing. And so many people, were seeing the benefits of that. And I was cautiously optimistic, incorrectly cautiously optimistic, that would kind of carry on beyond that. But I think the narrative is so strong around consumption and resource put against it that it's,
It's really, really hard because, like I say, I refer back to the like the government. Like on one hand, business confidence is up. On the other hand, mental health's up, or mental health, poor mental health is up. It's like, have none of you looked at the research in terms of rabid consumerism? Spending money, increasingly more of that is based on debt that you will never pay off to buy shit you don't need to make yourself feel happy because you don't like your life, which is essentially,
although, and the other argument that kind of comes in is, well, if we buy less, then what's going to happen to, businesses and things like that? Again, it's like, you look at, I remember at one conference, it might have been a Wasteman's conference, that Wishbone Bikes spoke,
I think was that the one in Christchurch? I think I was at that one.
Yeah, you spoke at it actually. Yeah. And I remember them talking about the fact that they were really going to embrace the fact that the second-hand market for their bikes. So talking about putting a Trade Me feed onto their website so that people could see that there was still value in them. And it made some business sense from the point of view of people could then see the value of the investment because they're a high price, price ticket one. But it was also fostering that reuse and that continuation. And then they obviously looked at the simplification of component parts so that repair was easy and stuff. And it was smart business as well as, not necessarily about selling more. It was about adding value and creating a connection with their products. So, and reuse and all of those things, like I think there is, just because it's not kind of traditional sell more, make more model, there is such, from a more mindful consumption model, there's still such a massive business opportunity. We just got to think.
100%, because it's the whole have you read any of David Graeber's stuff? He's the bullshit jobs guy. He sort of defines most of the jobs in the modern world. I think there's like 4 or 5. There's like the flunky, and there's like these other descriptions of jobs that are jobs for no reason other than that it's a job that's been made to kind of make another human feel better rather than actually, true service to the community or society at large. And I kind of get that sense is that there's so many people in bullshit jobs. And I've said it a few times on this podcast. It was a YouGov survey from the British government, and it's something like 43-ish% of people surveyed in Britain felt that their job provided them with no meaning. And in fact, they considered their job was more than likely contributing to destroying the planet. So we got people, which is potentially where you were headed. Like if you'd stayed, if you kind of been forced to stay in corporate for whatever reason, whether it was sort of financial circumstances or just lack of courage to sort of step out and just tip the table a little bit rather than flip it. You could see how you could be, and there's probably some of your colleagues who are still there, who are just like, I don't see a way out, but I kind of know that what I'm doing now is not great. And so for me, it's like, it's. I'm amazed that more people don't have a mental health crisis than we actually have because of how we're doing it. And how do we create this kind of degrowth economy where we have noble jobs that are actually worthy of humans doing that aren't just a bullshit job that's creating a financial return for someone at the end of the chain whilst destroying the planet? And it kind of feels like no one's really having that conversation. People like us are, but at a high level, all you ever hear at every election is, well, we're going to create jobs. And it's like, great. Are they going to be good jobs? Are they going to be good jobs that are creating something that human needs? Or is it you're just going to set up another factory making widgets to sell them to people that don't really want to buy widgets?
Interesting. Yeah. And I think, a big part of it is also the thing that's popping into my brain at the moment is social enterprises like All Heart, who are repurposing a lot of, corporate kind of furnishings and materials that would have otherwise been waste, and creating jobs in that way. And that's finding value in stuff that's already there, as opposed to finding value in things that are, so yeah, it's totally possible. It's just looking at value in a different way, I think. So it's, yeah, we definitely need to shift the dial on that one and shift our thinking for sure.
Which, you're a part of that. I think increasingly businesses like Wishbone, that are being brave about it, and I think they are a great example, because like we had one of their push bike, or what they called the scooter kind of bikes, for our daughter. It lasted, and then obviously it converts into a tricycle, so you're kind of getting two products for the price of one. It is just bulletproof, and it's currently boxed up in the attic. And my wife's like, "No, we're keeping that for if our daughter has kids, because it will last." And that's a very different mindset from the organisation that's required. And I think historically that's what it used to be. You'd inherit your grandparents' furniture, because it would last, because it was designed to last hundreds of years, whereas now you're lucky to have one desk or one table that would last even your lifetime, let alone a move between two houses, because it's so flimsy.
And so we've got more businesses selling more stuff, but then we're also losing so many things like, your repair services and your makers, those kinds of things. So yeah, to me, it's a little bit, the balance has gone out a little bit. And I think, just kind of looping back to businesses as well, I think, my attitude is not that everything needs to change. My attitude is, how does everybody and every business have an attitude of being better? In terms of wherever you are, wherever your job is, even if you are in an organisation where, the output might not necessarily be something you agree with, how do you try and influence that for the better as well? Like, it's never going to be perfect, but how do you make it better? Because that's my attitude, is it's not a black and white, everything must go and we must do this. It's wherever you are as an individual or as an organisation, how do you focus on being better? And if everybody has that attitude, then that's amazing. And when I first started working with corporates, I'm like, oh my gosh, how do I change all of my content to be organizational specific, right? Because I've been very focused on individuals. And then I was like, I'm starting to talk to more and more organizations and more corporates. I've got to change my content. And then I went, why do I need to change my content? Because an organization is a group of individuals.
Love it.
And if I can appeal to and change starts within organizations because of individuals. So if I can talk to a room full of 300 people, and even one or two of them as individuals go, oh, I'm into this, then they can create that ripple effect of change within their organization as well. So
I had exactly the same with the purpose stuff, and it's very, very similar for me. It's even an organization that might, from the outside, be the most bullshit organization that's selling stuff that nobody needs. At some point, someone invented that product or service because they thought someone might need it, or there might be a benefit. And so step one for me is find the meaning and the contribution in what you're doing. There has to be some contribution at some level. Then work out, okay, well, whilst we're delivering that, what are some of the unintended consequences? And actually, the most meaningful interactions we've had with our customers, quite often it's tangential to the core product or service that they're offering. But when we do that for a not-for-profit and we see that they have a really big impact in their community, that felt good. But when we're just kind of selling the same thing to punters who actually don't need it perhaps as much, it doesn't feel as meaningful. So, okay, right, well, now you've got a sense as to where you might be able to start pivoting. I hate that word. Pirouetting was the word I was using during lockdown. It just sounds more fun. I'm going to have a pirouette.
Isn't it? Yeah,
it's like, which is why it's grow good. It's like, find some good that you're doing, connect to the good, understand how that makes you feel, why that's important for someone else, and then build on it, do more good. And I think it's for me, it's hopeful, because doing good is contagious, and people fundamentally, we're designed for contribution. We're designed to do good. It's just that all the other stuff, we're busy and all the rest of it, blocks you.
Use the term that I hadn't used for a long time, which was that law of attraction as well, right? Like, it's just, it's so powerful. And I do what I do because I fundamentally believe in the ripple effect of change. And wherever you are as an individual or an organisation, don't underestimate the power
Totally.
that you will be influenced beyond what you even know. So,
100%. Yeah. And it's the same for me, like, because I had I was kind of like, how do you do organizational purpose? Because it's like, it's complex, but exactly right. An organization is just a collection of individuals who've chosen to coalesce around a shared vision or product or service or idea. And so if you influence a core group in the middle, they will just become attractors of the next group. And then those that don't want to play in the new paradigm will either vote with their feet, or it'll be kind of become uncomfortable for them to be in an environment that now has a vision and a purpose and a sense of doing something better, and that they'll go and find somewhere else. And just Ruth Vandenbrink just kept smashing the comments. She was there reading something saying that demand worldwide increased over lockdown, which is why we've got so many shortages. And I think that was I think people did feel kind of repressed for so long that it was kind of like, I just now need to go and buy shit now that the shops are open. I need that retail therapy, rather than maybe doing the deep personal development work that they needed to do to realize why their life wasn't sufficient. And that for me, that's kind of where I'm playing at, trying to help people realize that keeping on buying stuff isn't the solution to the thing that's in your head that's telling you you're not good enough, or you're not on the right track. So how can organizations or individuals get hold of you to come and do some amazing mainstream green work with you?
So just find me at Mainstream Green. So I'm on mainstreamgreen.co.nz, or I'm on Mainstream Green on all of the socials and on LinkedIn. And Mainstream Green is just me. You won't be diverted to the HR department or the finance department. You will get me. I do sometimes get those emails, to the finance department. Mainstream Green. I'm like, that is me.
It's me, myself, and I. Sorry, I'm just busy making a cup of tea for the CEO currently.
Exactly. So Mainstream Green, you will find me super easy just by searching for that. And let's just have let's connect, let's have a korero, because I think that's where everything happens. I'm a big believer in the power of conversation. So even if it's like, you don't know what, like we were just, sort of banding about that idea of, let's start a campaign or something. It's like, that's where all the good stuff happens, just the power of conversation. So
just start. I think that is a big take-home message for everyone. I've just finished this couple of cohort or program with 2 cohorts through NZTE, getting organizations all around B Corp stuff and getting them introduced to the idea of doing more good. And a real take-home message, particularly from Chris Herbert, who is a really cool person in helping organizations tell the story of the good that they're doing. It's like, you just have to start. Just take the first step. It's going to feel awkward. It's going to feel clunky. You're not sure if it's the right one, but taking a step is better than, like you say, that kind of paralysis analysis of, but do we do this? Do we do that? It's like, pick the one that's meaningful to you that you think you can do.
And having my own business has been such a learning in that space. So if you can sit around and every kind of campaign or event or anything that I've done, you try and design it to be perfect, and then you put it out into the real world, and when you socialize it, it's totally different. So I've kind of learned that you just got to put stuff out there and be human and be humble and accept the mistakes.
Totally.
Man, that's how you learn.
Totally. And at the end of the day, the thing for me, I guess you might have this as well when you're giving talks and doing workshops, is they don't know what you were going to present. So only you know that, that slide wasn't the slide I was thinking of putting in, but I changed it the last, they don't know that. And it'll be the same with your customers, or if you're a business wanting to make change, they won't know the 10 options that you were considering. They'll just look at the one that you did. And if it's even half good, they'll go, I think most consumers in general are supportive of organizations that are trying to make authentic steps in the right direction. And I feel
authentic. I think that's absolutely right. And I did some work with a pharmacy. I'm based in Cambridge in the Waikato, and did some work with a pharmacy down here. And the first thing they did, because so many businesses I work with are terrified of taking that next step, because they're like, we need to have a strategy, or we need to test this, or we need to have the perfect this, or we need to have the perfect that. And it's like, as long as you do it in an authentic and an open way, people are going to relate to that. So this pharmacy was like, okay, we're just going to start now. And they went out and they took a photo of their skip bin, which was full of all sorts of stuff that didn't need to be in there and kind of overflowing. And they took a photo of that skip bin and they placed it on social media, and they went, we are starting today on a journey to reduce our waste. This is what it looks like now. We're not going to get it all right, but, we really want to bring our customers on for the journey. And the outpouring of support was incredible, because it was really, really relatable. And it also gave them some accountability to keep doing it as well.
Love it. Fantastic. Hey, well, we're a bit over time, but we had some tech issues. Look, thank you so much for having a natter, having a chat. Love what you're doing. I think there's sort of a coalition of people. We're all sort of pushing in similar directions, and I think we're increasingly, our concepts are being increasingly mainstreamed. So good on you for nailing mainstream green. Any sort of final thoughts, comments, suggestions? Like if people want to do something, obviously other than buying your book, reading, watching your your TEDx talk. Any parting words of wisdom, advice for people?
Oh, the first one would be just borrow the book from the library, because I recognise the irony. Don't buy stuff, but buy my book.
Good on. How refreshing. Like, yeah, actually, you should all buy 5 copies of my book. Yeah, I love it. Go to the library, get my book.
I've actually got 3 copies, actually, with the old school library cards, like with the envelope, nice. And the library card on the cover, making their way around New Zealand. So you can get on that.
Good on you.
Yeah. So yeah, borrow my book would be great. Just don't tell my publisher. And
sales are really like, you're giving all these talks, but no one's buying your book. It must be us. Our marketing's clearly rubbish. Yeah.
We're very supportive. Thank you, HyperNorm. So yeah, absolutely. I think the biggest thing for me is just to flick a switch. Break that autopilot wherever it feels good. Change should feel good. So just choose either something that's really frustrating you or something that you're really drawn to, and just flick a switch and make a change. And it doesn't have to be perfect, just start.
Love it. Fantastic advice. Hey, well, thank you, peoples of the interwebs, for tuning in, and apologies for our technical difficulties. But yeah, thank you so much, Nick. That was super cool to reconnect with you. And it's good to see, good to hear you're doing well. People are interested in what you're doing as well, because we need more people to be interested in that. So yeah, thank you so much. I don't know who my next. I've been a bit sporadic with my bookings on this thing because life's been busy, doing lots of workshops and talks and stuff like that. So yeah, don't know who my next guest is. Watch this space. Give me any recommendations of who you'd like me to have a chat to. Cognizant that I've had a lot of very awesome wahine on my stream recently, but not many fellas. So come on, fellas. Who are the fellas doing some good stuff? Paul Evans. I should probably get you on.
Oh yeah,
he seems like a decent rooster.
Oh, Paul's incredible. Yeah, he'd be amazing. So, and thank you to you for all the amazing mahi you do as well. So
thank you.
Yeah, really proud.
Awesome. Oh, we'll catch you later.
Awesome. Cheers.